welcome back, our lovely viewers. And right about now, we're into the segment of Standard Magazine. Today is a Friday, and we talk about family. And today we are going to talk about raising the future generation. This is in line with career, it's in line with family, and I have an expert with me today, and we're going to discuss this together. But before we begin the discussion, I'd like her to introduce herself, and we'll dive into the discussion. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Samantha.
Yes.
I'm glad to be here. My name is Dora Bampangana. I work in Makerere University. I am a mother of 3 children.
Yes.
I have worked in Makerere for over 12 years.
Wow.
In administration and a little bit of teaching. And yes, I'm glad to be here to share on this topic that I'm really passionate about,
Yes.
raising the future generation.
Yes. So we are humbled that you are here to share with us information, and we're talking about raising the future generation. But when someone gets to hear of something like future generation, the first question will be, who is the future generation?
Who is the future generation?
Yes.
The future generation is, in simple terms, is a group of people born and raised in a same time period. It begins, let's say, from 22 years to up to maybe 30 years of the same period of time.
Yes.
Both gender, female and male. And children, teenagers, and young mothers and fathers.
Yes.
So it's a blend of many categories of persons in the same time period.
Yes.
And when you add the future generation, it means the generation after the current generation. So when you're raising the future generation, you're raising for the next generation after you.
Okay.
Yes.
So now we have that future generation, which is the one to come. And then we have this current
generation and the past generation.
Yes.
Yes.
So what are the behaviors that are displayed by the people in the current generation?
In the current generation.
Yes.
In the current generation, the behaviors in the current generation, I would want to first talk about the technology generation.
Yes, yes.
Where there's the TVs, there's the phones, there's education, there's exposure, there's globalization, and so the current generation is really the exposed generation in terms of they have a lot of information. They're exposed to different cultures, as opposed to the earlier generation, like maybe of our parents.
Yes.
Who were mainly fixed to the things of their communities and their towns. But now the current generation is more exposed. There's a bit of westernization, there's a bit of local. Yes, so it's the exposed generation. They know a little bit more than the previous generation.
Yes. So it's more like an updated version, because you find that
yes,
those people long ago, they used to be very reserved to the community only.
Yes.
You find that they would get to hold phones when they're at campus, but right now...
Yes, and the phone is only at home. If you want to make a phone call, you just wait to go home.
Right now, even a P5 child has a tablet.
Yes, and they're exposed to all this stuff.
Yes.
The things they watch, the information they read, the classwork, even at school, things have really changed.
Yes.
The things we used to study in primary 7, now a P2, a P3, they're already exposed to that information.
Yes.
So when you're raising a future generation, raising a generation that is really after you, it has that kind of, I don't know whether to call it a challenge, but we must be alert.
Yes.
There are things we need to be alert about. There are things we need to know as parents, and it's people looking and taking care of these children for the future generation.
Yes. So I was talking to a certain gentleman. He is not in my generation. He's in the past.
In the past generation.
Yes. So he was telling me, you children of nowadays, you're very unserious. Coming to campus those days and doing a law degree, someone would really be bright.
Yes.
But right now, they do papers for people. Someone just comes when maybe the school has given them kasasi. And they have passed time to do pre-entry, they can't even pass, So there are those challenges. So what gaps do you see in this current generation? Like, there are some gaps that our parents be saying, for us in our days, we would have to go to the garden first, but would still excel. For you wake up, you're driven to school, and you still come as a mediocre.
Yes.
So what gaps do you see in this current generation?
The gap, yes, that is really critical. It is a critical matter of late. You get a student who is a high flyer with very good grades coming into maybe a tertiary institution, and along the way, you realize that actually the students that came with not very good grades, they are the ones excelling.
Yes.
And the ones who came with very good grades are at the back of the class. Even when they go to start working out in the field, you realize that they are not as performing as they should have been expected. And this gap, as you have asked, is, as I always say, it begins from home, the way the children were raised. The way the children were raised. The Bible, the way it describes, it says, we are a gift to the future generation. We need to pass on these virtues to our children, so that they are not cheating students, they are hardworking students, and even the way the Bible says, teach your children when they are young, so that when they are older, they will not depart from it.
Yes.
So if you have trained your child right from the start, it instills in them the virtues of God, that they will not cheat, they will work so hard, and they will maintain it up to the end.
Yes.
And this is characterized, there are many attributes to this. There's good behavior, not just classwork, because even if you have the highest grades and your behavior is not forthcoming, the behavior is not upright, it can only take you to a certain point, and then you will not move beyond that point. Education alone and good grades cannot take you so far.
Yes.
It can only take you to a certain point, and then you need these other things like good behavior, good manners, and respect to the elders.
Yes.
If you're given a job, for example, and you cannot respect your superiors, you cannot respect your supervisors, high chances are that you may not even be promoted and taken to the next level, because you are seen as a rebel in the workplace. Yes.
So Dora, we were talking about this in line with career development. These are the gaps that we feel are existing. But do you know some of these reasons why we have some gaps? Because you talked about how they are brought up, but maybe we could pin out some of these points of how they are brought up. Because some parents will think, I love my child, I'm doing this for my child. Yet that specific thing they are doing is what is going to cause a gap
in the child's future. Yes. There's so much exposure, as we talked, as we said earlier. The children are exposed to so much information, even money. Nowadays, some of the children are raised by very rich parents. I'll talk about that in both ways, and also the other side where children are in so much lack, like they are lacking, and those who are
in extravagance.
Yes. So the parent provides literally everything. If you want water, it is just next to your bedroom. If you want food, it is actually brought home, and you never get to see where this food comes from. You do not, the child does not know that some of these things are actually worked for and earned. So when they grow up, they grow up as spoon-fed children who later even grow up to be spoon-fed grown-ups, adults, and even spoon-fed parents. you know?
Yes.
So, and this will translate from this spoon-fed, over-extravagant child who has not earned anything in their life. And here they are raising another generation. And that creates, obviously, a gap.
Yes.
So that is on one part, the extravagant life. The other part is the absent parents. There's economic pressure everywhere.
Yes.
The mothers are working, the fathers are working, and the child is raised in the hands of the caretaker at home, who probably is also a minor, and their upbringing is probably not standard, and they are raising this child. So when they grow up with an absent parent. The parents are not absent, they are not present at home. They have not learned from their parents, and you know, parents were the first teachers to our children.
Yes.
So they grow up with this void in them. They might excel in their exams, they will get very good grades, but they are still lacking in character. They are lacking their virtues. They have not been discovered, because as parents and caretakers of children, biological and not biological, depending on who we invite in our homes to mentor, as parents, we have to discover these children. These people have different talents, they have different giftings, and it's the work of the parent that will help to discover this child to grow into somebody very useful.
Yes.
Some children are born as musicians, for example, and then the parent is busy pounding this child. They want them to be engineers. They want them to be maybe medical doctors, or they want them to be lawyers. And yet for them, they were born to be musicians. So as parents, if we paid more attention to our children, it would help, it would narrow that gap. Having children out there who are wandering in the world, they don't know what to do, just because they were not helped to discover themselves.
Yes, you are so right. Now, I was actually just about to ask you how these gaps can be filled. But you know, there's an aspect that you talked about, the maids or the caretakers being the ones to raise the children.
Yes.
But there's that other aspect you may be left out, which I feel sometimes is also a contributing factor to these kinds of children who grow up when they don't really care. You find that the maid is supposed to do everything. You know, when we go to boarding school, we get exposed to different kinds of children and where they come from. And a child comes to senior 1 and she cannot wash her underwear.
Oh.
You know, the maid gets to do everything.
Everything for them.
Bring me food in my room, clean my room, wash my underwear, wash my clothes, you know. And literally all that the child does, wakes up, sits and watches TV until the day is done. Maybe later in the evening they go and play. You know, what do you have to say about parents who are doing such a big disservice to their children in that manner?
One way to bridge that gap is to be at home a little bit more and spend more quality time. Not just time at home, but quality time.
Yes.
We need to be like parents and caretakers and guardians. We need to spend more time with our children and raise them in a way that is appropriate. You know, we need to help our children discover themselves, and you'll not do that if you're really aware. And as I said, there's a lot of economic pressure. I understand we have to work, we have to do all these things to keep our lives really balanced, but we also need to be a little bit more at home. Be with the children, get to ask them what concerns them, where they are feeling. And actually, if you ask a child, they will tell you where there's a problem, and so that you can address it appropriately. We need to, there's something I talked about earlier on the side of providing too much for the children, but there's also a part of not providing for the children. You find a child, they are young, but they are subjected to child labor. They don't have time to to think, like to be children and discover themselves. They're busy fending for themselves. So as parents, we also need to step in and try as much as possible. It's actually in God's will to provide for our children. And so that the children are given time to reconnect with themselves, to play, to, you know, to grow into responsible citizens while they learn from us as parents. They see what you're doing, how you keep time, how you treat people in your home, because it is these same things that we bring out to our adult life. You know, if you have a child has been raised in a way that teaches them to respect their elders, to respect humanity generally, or to clean themselves, to be clean. That is how they will show up even in public. This is how they'll show up in their adult life, let's say at a university level, even into their workplaces, how they resolve conflicts in the workplaces. And so it is step by step, how they are raised, how they are taught how to start flying on their own, and how they get to be responsible and also be parents and take care of other people in their lives.
But I think that should be in a perspective which is balanced. You know, not over provide and not over deny.
Yes.
You know, I've heard of stories of different parents who tell their children, for us we used to walk, so maybe you should also walk. You know?
Yes. It has to be done in a balanced way. We used to walk, indeed, even our parents used to walk. And some children are still walking. But it has to be in a balanced form. If our parents had to walk 10 kilometers to get to a school, now times have changed. If they used to walk bare feet, now at least they need the shoes. So you, in a way, if a child is walking bare feet and the others are wearing shoes, it has an effect on them psychologically. So we have to try. I'm not saying you should give your child a Mercedes-Benz when they are going to, you know, maybe university, but they should be able to afford a certain lifestyle to kind of fit in with the rest of the communities, because it will have a psychological effect on these kids, and they may end up doing certain things that are not pleasing to be able to put up with the rest of the world. Also, it also depends on how they have been prepared. As you said, it always has to be balanced. The child who is probably coming to an institution, they need to be prepared not to compare themselves with the up. The ones who are over-provided for, to live within their means. They need to learn to live within their means. They need to be taught to be appreciative of their background, because that is very important. A child whose father is a minister and a child whose father is a peasant back at home, they cannot start comparing themselves. You have to live within your means. And we have, as children, as these people we are mentoring, they have to be taught to live within their means and to appreciate their backgrounds and focus on the final goal, which is good grades at the end of the day.
So as we're talking about raising the future generation, we realize that parents have a part to play. But we have people I choose to call secondary parents. We have the primary parents who give birth to the children. But you realize your child is in institutions of learning all their life. And if you've put your child in boarding from P1, you'll be shocked that the teacher knows your child more than you do. So how are these institutions of learning going to help us raise the future generation?
The institutions of learning, they should not just focus. That is very good, because that's a very good question. One, the parents are spending less and less time with their children, and these are children who have been raised in boarding schools, mentored by teachers. the students, the children nowadays actually respect and fear their teachers more than the parents at home.
Yes,
yes,
that's true.
They do, and yet the parents were supposed to be, supposed to be before the teacher, the teacher, in line of command. But these children respect their teachers more than the parents at home. But it should not be like that. And so they grow and go to institutions, and they have had not enough time with their parents. They have not been groomed well. They are actually not ready to be out there in the world. So the institutions, as you have asked, how can they support these children? It would be good to have support centers, which I would call maybe like counseling and guidance to these children. These are youth who are just beginning to live, and they need to always be kept in line through guiding and counseling. There could be workshops, maybe organized workshops on for these children, for these young people, to teach them and keep them in line. Also, institutions should work with parents. I know when a young person goes to the university or any institution of higher learning, in most cases, the parents do not follow up as they have been following up in secondary. Yes. But the parents should also make an initiative to be in touch with these institutions, get to see where these young people are living, get to see how they can be supported, get to know the procedures in the university. You find that this person begins their studies up to third year or even fifth year, depending on the course they are doing, and the parent has never been to
the place of residence.
Yes, the place of residence, even the place of the institution itself. They have never been there, and they're only coming for graduation. And sometimes these parents are awakened to, bad things like the child has actually never been in class and they are not graduating. But all these things can be minimized if the parents were more in touch with the institutions. I'm more in touch with their children in these institutions of higher learning to make sure that they keep following up, that the children, if these people are paying the fees, if they are registering, if they are, doing exams, and actually ask for progress reports. Not to just leave it for the institutions.
Yes.
I believe the parents are busy, and some of them probably could be illiterate, but we have to make effort to make sure that we follow up our children.
Yes.
Yeah,
so Dora, originally we talked about the difference between the current generation and the future generation. Now, this current generation is the kind that is technology based, and it has caused more harm than good, because a child who is maybe 6 years old gets to watch things which are rated PG. But they're doing this on their own because maybe they have a tablet, maybe they have Wi-Fi in their house. So, parents still have a role to play, because there are some children you take a look at and you're thinking, I want to see the mother of this child. I know they are very strict, they are very principled, and it's the same world we're all living in, but still it starts with the parents. You find a child is going to go to school, and while the friends are watching maybe pornography, maybe they're in secondary school, child will say, no, me, I cannot watch that. So how best, because now this is the future generation. I've heard of girls who say, me, in my house, I'll be collecting everyone's phones, put in the basket, to avoid these things, because it's a threat. It is a threat.
It is a good thing to have technology in the current times, but it is also a threat.
Yes.
We can, as mentors and parents, we can only limit. And also educate, communicate. Communication goes a long way in this world, in mentoring. Teach them what they should use these gadgets for and how far they should go. There's so much exposure. But while that is also ongoing and maybe the parent is not able to control it, there's also what the parent can do for the child at home and expose them to these other things to keep them grounded.
Yes.
For example, instead of, if it's a child's birthday, instead of taking him to watch a movie out there, take them to a certain farm and see how things are done, maybe in a model farm. And so that not to create competition with the technology world, but to keep them grounded also, to know what is really on ground, what is really, to help them teach their minds to work and their hands also to work. Take them to church. There's a lot to learn in church as well. So that you minimize and keep balance of what they are learning on the other side with what they are learning, for example, in church or at home. For example, if buy books at home instead of the children just reading online material, buy for them books so that they keep that tradition. Their culture is maintained. Read. They know a book. You read a book, turn a page, and keep the book instead of going online to read materials which may not even be appropriate. Yes. So in a way, because for example, even when these kids have been exposed to too much technology, even at work, if they are asked to write a report, they copy and paste, plagiarism, things like that, even in school. But if they have been taught to read hard books, go to museums, see how learn their past, there's a lot more they can also learn on the other side. Expose them to the older generation to learn certain things, and so that they can appreciate that life as well, even when the technology world is ongoing. Because as I said, the tech world has pros and cons. There's so much they can also
help us with.
Yes, they can also learn a lot from the information world. There's networks to be built. They can actually benefit from the networks built online. There's a lot of marketing they can do online. There's a lot of good programs they can pick from the technology world. So it is up to the parents, it is up to the mentors and the guardians to teach them that, yes, this gadget is here and it is really good, but there are things you can pick from this gadget other than the pornography, other than this, the Hollywood stuff, as I would call them.
Yes. So, recently there's a story of a lady or a baby. She was a young girl who was murdered. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I can tell you just a summary of it. This baby was abandoned by the mother. Okay, not really abandoned. This mother was going to work abroad. So she gets her baby, takes this baby when she was 2 years old to this nursery school and says, I'm paying for the first 4 months, paying school fees and
upkeep.
Upkeep.
4 months.
Yes, 4 months. And she said, when I go, I'll keep sending you money. She entrusted this baby with the head teacher. The head teacher was female. And then this lady starts sending money to the head teacher. After some time, she stops sending. There's no connection with her. And that's when the bitterness begins on this child. They'll beat her every day, beat her every day, beat her every day. And unfortunately, this time they beat her, she died. Because they kept hitting her on the wall, they'd keep hitting her on the wall. And she just collapsed and died. Yes. And this woman was in panic. What she did, bathed the child, removed the clothes with blood, and put this child's dead body among the daycare children who were sleeping. And when it was time for people to pick their children, they discovered this is actually a dead body. And apparently there was some blood still leaking through the head. So it comes from a point of parents who give their children to other people. You find maybe, let's say if things have gone wrong and maybe the girl got pregnant while at campus and then she maybe takes the child to an auntie. Is it possible that these children raised by other people will not really get that touch of belonging? Because there's that aspect of, I'll really, really be keen because this is my child. You know, there are times when children can be stubborn, we all know that. But you know, that touch of the parent.
The touch of the parent. That's a very bad story.
Yes.
But as the elder people in these children's lives,
Yes.
we need to cultivate compassion. Truly, I know probably biological parents and biological children are more attached to their parents. But as a parent, as an old person, even if you have not yet given birth, you can still groom a child, you can still love them and train them and make it your responsibility to groom these people. I mean, beating up a child just because they are not yours is not appropriate. But also on the other hand, I know parents who have beaten their children, their own children. Yes, wow. Their own children. And some of these things are brought about by how someone was raised or some of the challenges they have faced. As you have said, maybe this is probably a young girl who got pregnant and maybe she was not even able to look after this child. And so she didn't have any help. And that is why I think probably even the government can put up certain facilities to help this category of people. We all need help at a certain point in our lives, yes. Different kinds of help. But if there are certain facilities like in communities, like maybe in health centers, these young mothers, as you have brought it out, they can be taught and mentored how to actually love these children that they have brought into the world.
Yes.
Because every child is a gift from God. Every child is a gift from God. And so if they are mentored as young mothers, who were probably not ready to have these children, but now the children are here, they need to be mentored, they need to be shown how they can love their own children, yes. And how they can give them support.
Wow, so before we close this segment of the show, I want you to at least give people a piece of advice or maybe any statement that will keep people moving in raising the future generation.
Okay, I will say this in two parts, both on the part of the parent and also on the part of the children that are being mentored.
Yes.
One of the commandments that God passed down to us is honor your father and your mother. It actually goes on to say, so that your days may be long. And it also in I think Ephesians, it's in Colossians, the Bible says children should obey their parents in all things, and this is pleasing to God. Imagine if you are pleasing to God. There are so many possibilities. And if a child follows in the footsteps of their parents, if the parent is actually doing good, when I say parent, I mean guardians and caretakers.
Yes.
If you're already doing good and these children are learning from you, then the future generation is actually saved.
Yes.
Yes, because what we learn today is what we pass on to the people we are mentoring, and that is what they will pass on to the future generation. And so we shall go a long way if we kept ourselves in line, and wherever there's need for any help, let's seek help. Let's also offer help. If you see someone is really falling apart in line with raising their family, you can talk to them.
Yes.
Communication, as I said, it goes a long way in building these future generations.
Yes.
We try to bridge the gap, love one another, and cultivate compassion, both to the people being raised and also the people raising, because at a certain point in life, we may all need help to raise these children
Yes.
for the future. And also what I would want to say is that these things we learn from home, we can also transfer them to the workplaces, and vice versa.
Yes.
We are taught maybe like conflict resolution, or conflict resolution, for example, in the workplaces, negotiation skills, and all these other skills that we learn in the workplaces, we can also bring them home and learn how to resolve conflict, how to groom good character, because in the workplaces, like the older generation, they are taught how to build teams, how to, they have learned also how to negotiate, learned how to mentor in the workplaces.
Yes.
But then we can also translate this into our homes and build good teams at home, reward good behavior. Promotion should not just be in the workplaces. It can also be at home. You know, you reward someone if they do good so that they can do better in the future. And also keep peace. You would rarely find someone in a workplace, you know, keeping a grudge and they're unhappy with the neighbor. At least they will manage to greet and smile.
Yes.
And yet at home, there's a lot of, you know, fighting.
Yeah,
So we can translate, we keep learning from both worlds to keep it balanced.
Wow, that is amazing. Well, thank you so much, Dora.
You're welcome.
And that
Samantha.
has been Dora. She has been telling us about raising the future generation. And I believe that many of you have learned so much, because I have learned so much. We as the heads are here to inform you, inspire you, and educate you. But right about now, our time is fast spent. We are going to go for a quick commercial break, and when we return, we will have the sports segment by Ali Matovu. So do not touch.